Hello, pup parents, and welcome to today's episode of the Perfect Pup Podcast. My name is Devin. As you can see by the title of this episode, it's probably something you obviously knew. Your dog is not an actual robot, but I'm going to tell you how sometimes as pup parents, we act like our dog is a robot. So let's get right into it. First things first, I love robots, generally speaking. As a kid growing up, it was like you love the idea of a robot and this machine that can do all these tasks. And now we live in a day and age where a lot of things in our lives are robotic. You have a if you have a like a Roomba type vacuum that is literally a robot that vacuums your house. You have maybe a smart speaker where you can talk to a robot and the robot will do things for you, or set timers, reminders, those types of things. So we live in a oftentimes very robotic world, and we expect to get the right output whenever we put as the input. So if we say set an alarm for 6 p.m., we expect that alarm to go off at 6 p.m. and not 6:01 or 7:01. We expect it right at that time. So put something in, get the exact thing that we expected on the output. And I think that turns into a trap in how we perceive our dogs and how we work with our dogs. So there's a few points that I want to make here, and hopefully it can help you kind of reevaluate how you're approaching your dog in general, but especially with how you're approaching training your dog. So on the sense of our dogs are not robots, one of the important things to remember is that one thing that might work for another dog may not work for yours. And I've talked about this before, but I have two Labrador Retrievers. They literally have the same parents, they're sisters. So you would think, oh, if two dogs are going to act similar or the same, it would be my two Labs because they are sisters. And I can tell you what, they are so completely different and so varied in their responses to different experiences and environments that, it just goes to show you cannot expect that something that works for your neighbor's dog or something you see on a YouTube video or in the Pupford app is going to work exactly for you, because our dogs are not robots. And the way that, someone teaching recall with fetch, it might work great for your dog, but it might not work for your neighbor's dog. And I know that's such a simple thought that, oh, not every dog is exactly the same, but we need to remember that. We need to remember that with dog training, yes, the laws of learning and reinforcers and marking behaviors and those types of things are important. And you may watch dog trainers like on YouTube, or if you see someone in person who's really skilled, and it can seem fluid and it can seem slightly robotic in the sense that every time they ask for something, they get the same output. And that's just not the case with our dogs. And it's not the case when we're training. And so we need to remember to have that little bit of allowing for differences in experiences, even for specific training behaviors. So again, what works for your dog may not work for another. And that goes as well for just even how we approach raising our dogs. You can get online and read a forum. You could ask a question, for example, about, oh, what food should I feed my dog? And you'll get a million different answers, right? And that's because every single dog is different, amongst other reasons. But keep that in mind. The other part on robotic and how, our dogs are not robots, we also shouldn't be robotic when we train. Again, you'll watch some trainers and it can feel almost robotic because they're so good at it and they've had so much practice. But remember that, as we're training our dogs to mix things up, if you're just every single time you go to the exact same 10 routines of training behaviors and then you get the same results, it's like, well, why are we not seeing improvement? Why are things not getting better? Just remember that, even for yourself in your own training, try to be less robotic and try to mix things up. If you're working on recall and, your dog doesn't seem to be improving, take a step back, just go from 3 feet away with the recall and do something crazy, like jump up and down, just do things that maybe wouldn't seem like, oh, that's not how I was taught, or that's not how I've seen it done before. Don't be afraid to try new things with how you interact and how you communicate with your dog. The kind of final point I want to make on remembering that our dogs are not robots is to give your dog a break. And what I mean by that is, let me tell you through an example. My dogs wear harnesses and they fit perfectly great. It definitely is comfortable for them. I have, done all the things to make sure it's fitting correctly. But for some reason, when I put a harness on my dogs, they sometimes get like rigid and they act like they don't know how to walk. It's kind of a funky experience, right? As I was going out the door earlier, I was getting my dogs into a sit before letting them walk through the door, just because that's good for impulse control. And one of my dogs sat, the other dog, Scout, she wouldn't sit. She wouldn't sit. And I kept thinking to myself, like, what is going on? Why is she not sitting? Why is she not doing this? And I realized that, I think maybe potentially she was uncomfortable in that moment. There was a level, again, the harness fits correctly. It's not uncomfortable for her, but like in her mind, there was this discomfort. And so she was attentive and she was paying attention to me, but she wasn't going into a sit. And I had to remind myself, okay, she's not a robot. There's moments where, she might, I don't know exactly what's going on in her head. And so I don't necessarily need that sit per se. And another example, my dog Sunny, she has minor hip dysplasia, and it affects how I train her. My dog Scout, if I ask for a down, I want her to go down and I want to stay. But I don't do that with Sunny, because I know that sometimes laying in certain positions can hurt her hips. It's not comfortable for her. And that's where I think we need to remember that, and you know your dog better than anybody else. And remember that when you're training. Remember that, we often get into that trap of, okay, I need to ask for a sit and I need to get it right away, or I need to ask for this, I need to get it right away. And our dogs are not robots. They sometimes just need a break. You don't sometimes know exactly what's going on. They might be hearing something or smelling something that you can't even detect as a human, and that might be altering how they are interacting in that training session. So remember that. Remember that your dog deserves a break from time to time, just in the sense of, kind of giving your dog the benefit of the doubt, letting them know, okay, you're not getting this perfect right now. Like, there could be a ton of factors as to why. So I hope, again, you knew coming into this episode, your dog is not a robot. Obviously, that's, kind of being, I'm over analyze or oversimplifying it, but we forget it as pup parents that our dogs are not robots, and they do have emotions and they have feelings and they have, you know, different things happening in their environment that we might not be understanding. And so we need to remember that our dogs are not robots. They are fluid beings that have differences, and things happen from time to time. And so just kind of stepping back and remembering that, and being willing to, try different things with your dog, being willing to adapt your training for the dog that's in front of you. And, you've heard this before. Trainers will say it all the time: train the dog in front of you. So I hope you learned something from this episode. I hope it gets you thinking about how you can approach your relationship with your dog and your behavior training with your dog from a sense of, and through the lens of, this is my dog. They have all these different nuances. They have all these different things that happen with him on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to adapt my training. I'm going to adapt how I raise my dog based off of, their life and what works best for them. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it got you thinking. If you haven't already, please leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts, especially if you type out a review about what you do or don't like. I read every single review, so I really, really appreciate that, for those of you who have done that. And if you haven't, please leave a review. I really appreciate it. And other than that, we will catch you on the next episode.